Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Torah L'Chaim with your host, Rabbi Anibal. So happy and excited to be here with all of you one more time, study the weekly Parsha. And this is a special Parsha. We are studying a new book. Second book of the Torah, the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus. And we are going to start studying the story of Moses and the Exodus from Egypt. It's a great chapter. Jewish history is the chapter where we started to develop our identity as a nation. Up to this point, we read the book of Genesis, lots of great teachings there, but as from the Jewish point of view, it's just talking about one family and the dynamics between the family. But now we start looking at the birth of the Jewish nation. It's not anymore about a family, it's about a nation now. It's something else. So welcome, Karen Farkas. Shalom to you. And Paul Rayburn. Long time no see. Yes. Welcome to the class. Sorry, it's not in person anymore, but maybe one day soon we'll bring it back. We have all kind of problems with space until we come back to our building, and then why not? We can do something maybe like a hybrid, right? Like a hybrid model. I always wanted to do that, but before we didn't have the technology. Now we have the technology, but we don't have the space. So those are life could be, life could be so, I don't know. It's difficult to plan, right? Difficult to plan. I remember even going back to, what was it? 2012, 2013, I was already dreaming with having a hybrid class. But again, we didn't have the tech. And now when we could do it, we don't have the space. Anyway, thank you, Paul. Randy Lodinger is here as well. Yeah, Rabbi Green. Yeah. Whew. That was like a life and a half ago. At least it feels like that with everything that happened since he left. Yeah, Karen Farka. Shelly Chochinov, you're here as well. I say hello to you before. And yeah. Who else is there? Who else isn't there? If you have access to the chat, please let me know. I'm counting heads here. We have Shelly, we have Karen, we have Paul, we have Randy. Please say hi. Say hi in the chat. I want to read your name. Before we start studying the Parsha. As I said before, it's a great Parsha. Where we are going to start discovering a little bit of the personality of Moses, which is going to be very important to try to understand the new leader of the Jewish people. Many of the things that happen from this Parsha all the way to the end, it's going to be connected one way or another to Moses. The same way that the Jewish nation changed from the time that they left Egypt to the time that they entered to the Promised Land, I would say that Moses changed as well. It's not that if you like reading your Bible, if you like reading the Torah, it's not the same Moses, the one that we are going to read in this Parsha, to the Moses that is talking to the Jewish people at the end of Deuteronomy. It was a great evolution. Paul Rayburn, you would like to become a member of the shul? That's easy. Call us, and we will take care of you. Please call the office. Holly Mandelkern is here as well. Welcome, Holly. Welcome. And I will one more minute, and then we are going to dive into this week's Parsha. Okay? One more minute. Let's see who else is here so we can study together. I can bring it here for you. We can start. So, I want to start today with the second chapter of the book of Exodus. Okay? The first chapter is talking about the description of slavery, Jewish people. There was a new Pharaoh. Nobody remember who Joseph or Jacob were anymore there, which was very sad. Very sad because everything that Joseph did for Egypt. They saved them from famine, basically. But then nobody remembers him, or maybe they didn't want to remember him. Sometimes it's convenient not to remember somebody else, and not recognizing, not being thankful for everything they did, right? Shelley Chachinov, you say, isn't this week the yard site of Maimonides? Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. I know there are lists online that you can check that when the yard site for different rabbis are. In fact, I don't know if my let's see. No, I don't think my. I used to have an app on my phone that it will give me the yard site of. Let's see here. Here it says I have something, Shelley. Not today. Not today. How do I go to tomorrow? Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, tomorrow, Shelley. You're right. Friday. Friday is the yard site of Maimonides. Look, I have it here. You don't believe me? Let's see. There it is. First line is at the yard site of Rav Moshe ben Maimonides. Yeah. Thank you, Shelley. Okay, so I want to start here in chapter 2 because this is when we'll start reading about Moses, okay? But it's interesting that the Torah just doesn't present us to Moses, but also Moses' parents. And they were also great people, and what they did was fantastic as well. Because here in the second chapter of the book of Exodus, we read about that there was a man of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi. Okay, so we are talking about a couple that it was formed from within the tribe of the Levites. So here it's talking about Moses' parents. So we know from the get-go that Moses is a Levite. Okay, he's coming from the tribe of Levi. Tribe of Levi. And why this is a big deal? The beginning of chapter 2. Well, because it was a ban. You remember everything that the Pharaoh decreed against the Jewish people. How Pharaoh wanted to kill all the baby boys, right, and so forth. So, basically, there was a midrash that the Israelites stopped making babies, right? Rather than taking the risk of Pharaoh taking the babies away from them. So with that in mind, I want to present to you what the Talmud says about this situation and why this verse, Exodus 2:1, is so important, and how important it is the fact that it is connected to Moses through his parents. Okay, so let me bring here the Talmud. This is from the Masechet Sotah, Tractate Sotah, page 12a, and it says, where did he go? Is this, right? So back to the verse. It said, there was a man of the house of Levi and took to wife. There went a man of the house of Levi. So the Talmud starts asking, where did he go? Because it there went. You see in Hebrew, Vayelech, he went. Vayelech ish. So the Talmud starts with this question. Where did he go? The Torah doesn't say where did he go. So that's where the Talmud brings it. Where did he go? He went in the counsel of his daughter. Moses' father Amram was the greatest man of his generation. When he saw that the wicked Pharaoh had decreed, every son that is born you shall cast into the river, he said, in vain do we labor. He went and divorced his wife. All the Israelites thereupon arose and divorced their wives. Said his daughter to him, Father, your decree is more severe than Pharaoh's. Pharaoh decreed only against males. You have decreed against males and females. Pharaoh only decrees concerning this world. You have decreed concerning this world and the world to come. In the case of the wicked Pharaoh, there is a doubt whether his decree will be fulfilled or not. In your case, it will certainly be fulfilled. So Amram went and remarried his wife, and they arose and took back their wives. And he took to wife, it should have read, and he took back. Said Rabbi Judah ben Zabina, he acted towards her as though it has been the first marriage. He seated her in a palanquin. Aaron and Miriam danced before her, and the ministering angels proclaim a joyful mother of children. This is very interesting because it says here that it was Miriam, Moses' older sister, the one who convinced her father to keep having babies. That, you can't let Pharaoh get away with this one. If we have faith, somehow we are going to make it to the other side. And that is amazing because this is the introduction of the birth of Moses. These are the stories that Moses are going to hear eventually. Because you know what happened, right? That even though Moses was born and he was put in a basket and put in the Nile River, and then the Pharaoh's daughter found him. And eventually he was brought back to his own house. Moses was brought to his biological mother so she could nurture him, because Pharaoh's daughter couldn't do that. And so also it's something that the Torah doesn't mention, and we have to use our imagination. What stories did little Moses hear at the house of his biological father? Even though after he wasn't a baby anymore, he was brought to the palace and he was raised as an Egyptian. But it looks like, and we are going to see in a few minutes, how his Jewish identity was always inside him. And he always had questions, Moses. Who am I? Or what am I? And again, the Torah doesn't say anything. So this is the kind of parsha that we have to read between lines and use our imagination and our logic to try to understand why Moses became Moses. And this is fundamental for us to understand why Moses became the Moses that we all know. And everything started with his parents making this bold decision. And not only that, they did it because Miriam convinced him to do it. So he's also talking about Miriam's wisdom. We always talk about Moses' leadership, but we forget about Miriam's wisdom and how she was fundamental for the Jewish people to become a free nation. Something to think about. Priscilla carries here with us, hopefully until the end. If you have to go to see patients, Priscilla, we understand. But welcome to the class. Okay, so any questions so far? Any questions other than Shelley asking if this was the yahrzeit of Maimonides? And you know what, Shelley, this is important because Maimonides was also called, his name was Moses. His name was Moses. And there is this saying in the rabbinic world that Maimonides was the first important rabbi called Moses since this Moses that we are reading in this week's Parsha. That's why the rabbi said, from Moses to Moses, there was no one like Moses. Have you ever heard that saying? From Moses to Moses, there was no one like Moses. And when they said from Moses to Moses, they are talking from the biblical Moses to Moses Maimonides. There was no one like Moses, like the two of them were great people. Shelley, you said, no, it's so strange, Robert. Children adopted shortly after birth often ask, who am I? Yeah, but it looks like Moses was with his biological mother for, I don't know, maybe 1-2 years in those days. I don't know. It's very interesting. And he was surrounded by his own biological family. So Great. It's great. Okay, so let's continue with chapter 2. I want to take you now to chapter 5. Okay? Look how fast everything happens here. Exodus 2:1, Moses' parents decide to go back to have children. Verses 5, so 4 verses after, Moses is already a baby. Moses was already put away. And basically here is when Pharaoh's daughter finds baby Moses. So it says, the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe in the river, while her maids in attendance walked along the riverside. Spotting the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. You know what happened here, right? This is the time when Moses will be adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. And even though she knew that the baby was an Israelite, she realizes pretty quickly, right? And nevertheless, she decided to adopt this baby, which technically she was not allowed, because the whole idea, I don't know if you again go back and read the first chapter. The decree was all the boys you will kill, all the girls you can let them live, because back in the day the girls will assimilate by marriage, but not the boys. The boys is like they never lost their identity, so you can't let them live because they will never assimilate by marriage, because back in that society, the woman will adopt the identity of the husband. It was like a male-dominated society, right? I mean, I know. We all know that. We can get angry all we want, but it won't change the fact that that's what it was. So there was this absolute ban of leaving babies from any culture that you wanted to annihilate alive. But yet here, Pharaoh's daughter decided to save baby Moses, and the rest, you know what happened. But there is a beautiful midrash that we read from here that I wanted to present to you, because it's not evident, but it's a beautiful allegory and a beautiful teaching that we can learn from here. Listen to this. This is also coming from the Talmud with the explanation of Rashi. And let me read this again, and then I will go to the explanation. This is the daughter of Pharaoh, okay, came down to bathe in the river, while her maids in attendance walked along the riverside. Spotting the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it, because I guess the basket was too far away, so she has to send someone to get it for her. Okay, but it's very interesting because look at in Hebrew at the very end of the verse, "Vatishlach et amata vatikacheha." Okay. Vatishlach, she sent, amata in this context is translated as her maid, vatikachea, to bring it, to grab it. Okay? So, the Talmud, with interpretation of Rashi, it says, another interpretation of this verse renders the Hebrew word amata as her arm, rather than her maid. Amata also means arm length. You will see this word in the Torah a lot, amot. You know, the distances were measured in amot, which is the same word. Amata or amot comes from the same root. And when the rabbis are discussing how long is the amot, when they read the Torah, they need to, you know, it was the consensus. There was an arm length, amot, arm length. So in this case, when the Talmud, when the Rashi reads amata, they connect it with the word amot, or this arm length, or this measure of length based on an arm. And the Midrash will say, this is to teach us that her arm was extended for many arm lengths to enable her to reach the basket. You understand what the Midrash is saying here? Welcome, Josue Salva, Shalom. And okay, you will watch the broadcast. Absolutely. Thank you for the reminder. If you missed anything of this class, any part, this class is going to be rebroadcast at 8 p.m. Central Time tonight, okay? So you have another opportunity to study. So this is a beautiful thing. Now, let's go back to this. And why do I say that is so important? That the arm of the daughter of Pharaoh extended miraculously so she could be able to grab and to bring this basket. Okay? Listen to this. It's coming from a Hasidic rabbi who is bringing an amazing teaching. If Moses' basket lay beyond her reach, why did Pharaoh's daughter extend her arm? Do you understand what he's saying here? They say, yeah, we read there, the Midrash said that her arm extended miraculously. But she didn't know that that was going to happen. Okay? So why would she try if she knew that in the natural world she wouldn't be able to reach it? So let's continue. Could she possibly have anticipated the miracle that her hand will be extended for many arm length? No. So there is a profound lesson here for each and every one of us. Often, we are confronted with a situation that is beyond our capacity to rectify. Someone or something is crying out for our help. But there is nothing we can do. By all natural criteria, the matter is simply beyond our reach. So we resign ourselves to inactivity, reasoning that the little we can do won't change matters. Anyway, so have you ever heard that expression? Why bother? Why bother? Have you ever said it before, maybe? Well, there is not much I can do, so why bother? It's very common, human nature. Let's continue. But Pharaoh's daughter heard the child's cry and extended her arm. An unbridgeable distance lay between her and the basket containing the weeping infant, making her actions seem utterly pointless. But because she did the maximum of which she was capable, she achieved the impossible. Because she extended her arm, God extended its reach, enabling her to save a life and raise the greatest human beings ever to walk the face of the earth. What an amazing midrash. Let me tell you why this is so important. Okay? Beyond the factual thing of this. And the midrash is trying to present Pharaoh's daughter as a woman of faith. Because if she knew that she wouldn't be able to reach the infant, why would she even try? Well, she tried, as every person with faith, they try with something seeming impossible because they always trust that maybe a miracle will happen. Or maybe I will figure something out in the way. Or maybe I will discover something new, but I'm going to try anyway. And then something happened, right? And then you realize that you can do it. She had that on her. And I think that's what the Midrash is trying to point out. But now you can understand that this baby Moses that spent her early years in the house of his biological parents with everything that they did before Moses was born, all that was transferred to this baby Moses. Eventually he grew up and he went to live in the palace, and he lived with this woman who was an example of having faith and a divine power. Having faith and trying to do something that seems to be impossible, but you do it anyway because you never know. It may happen. Moses learned it, as this Midrash is trying to show us, from her adoptive mother. So you understand, I think these stories are very important to try to help us develop an image of Moses' capabilities, and why Moses became Moses. Because he learned all this from early age. That's why Moses sometimes seems to do stuff that looked impossible, but nevertheless, he was able to do it. He learned it at home. Either one home, biological home, or the Egyptian home. Any comments? I want to see what you think about this. This story also reminds me every time I read it to the story of Hanukkah, right? When the rabbis went ahead and decided to lit the menorah anyway, even though they didn't have enough oil, and then they had the miracle. They did what they could. God did what they couldn't because they gave the 100%. That's the thing. Shelley is an example of chesed. Also because she wanted to save the baby, and that is an example of chesed. Absolutely. Where another things that I don't know if Moses' adoptive mother, the Pharaoh's daughter, if she ever talked to Moses about the circumstances how he was saved from the water. You have an example here of an Egyptian saving a Hebrew. They shouldn't have done that because they are not like us. It's not an Egyptian. It's inferior. Not for her. She decided to go and save the baby anyway. That didn't matter, was Egyptian or Hebrew. She went and saved this baby. And Moses learned that as well, as we are going to see in a minute. Karen Farkas. Maybe when she reached out, there was a stick. She used to... Yeah. You see, this is the thing. I think it's this is a midrash, right? This is a midrash. But maybe she did say somebody else. But it's, first she tried, she couldn't do it. Then she figured out other ways until that happened. You don't give up because some other people say, "Well, it's too far away. Forget it. Let's keep going. Let's keep walking." Right? But no. She reached out anyway, and she was able to get that basket out of the water. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. But as I say, Moses was someone that when we learn about how much he loved justice and he couldn't tolerate injustice. As we have this story, for example, let's continue now. Chapter 2, verse 11. And remember the story when he saw an Egyptian hitting a Hebrew. He intervened, and they say, well, of course, it wasn't a Hebrew, one of his brothers. But then, not really. When, you will see that Moses intervened in other situations where he saw injustice, where there were, for example, two Hebrews fighting, or when he escaped, he went to Midian, he actually sees another group of people that they were not even Egyptians or Hebrew fighting with each other or harassing a woman on the wells of water. Remember? That woman eventually became his wife. But then he couldn't tolerate that, and he intervened because Moses was somebody who couldn't tolerate injustice. He didn't care who was involved. That's something that maybe he learned at home from Pharaoh's daughter, because that's the way she behaved when she saved Moses. So let's go here and look what happened. Because remember I told you at the beginning how Moses probably had these two sides. The Hebrew side that he discovered at one point in life. I don't know how, but we know that because look at this. It said, it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out to his brothers. How did he know? That those were his brothers? Have you ever asked yourself that question? That means that Moses was well aware that he was biologically a Hebrew. Was it because Pharaoh's daughter told him? Was it because his family reached out? We don't know. The Torah doesn't say how he knew. But it says here, he went out to his brothers. Clue. And he saw their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian man smiting a Hebrew man, one of his brothers. See, the word brother is repeated here. But let me read some of your question here, or your comments. Shelley Chochinov, water is key in the Moses story. As a baby, he was basket in a river, later crossing the Sea of Reed. Interesting. Never thought about that. Josue Selva. Who were the three counselors the Pharaoh called for advice concerning the destination of the Hebrew kids? I don't know. It might be a midrash of that, but I don't know. Randy Lodinger. God made Pharaoh's daughter childless, so the opportunity made the moment all planned. Maybe, because we believe that everything is in the hands of God and there is a master plan. So yeah. Karen Farkas, will he have been circumcised? Probably, because it doesn't say how far or how soon after birth Moses was put into that basket. He may have been circumcised before. So probably yes. That's one thing. Yeah, maybe he asked the question at one point, why am I circumcised and other people are not? I'm not so sure also what was the Egyptian tradition of circumcision. They may have been circumcised anyway. I don't know. That's a question for historians and archaeologists. I don't know if they have any saying about that. I don't know if you ever heard about it. Okay. Then Josue said Moses' father-in-law, and the guy called to curse them. But father-in-law, he's not here. It's not part of the story yet. You're going way ahead. Okay. So far, he's still in Egypt. Moses here. Paul, you say what happened with the Ark of the Covenant? Again, nothing happened yet, because the Ark of the Covenant is not mentioned yet in the Torah. That will happen after revelation of the Torah. Okay, Josue, you will look for the reference. Okay, thank you. Okay, so back to this. So we know now that Moses knew that he was Hebrew, and but Indiana Jones, Karen Farkas, yes. But there is something very interesting, because and it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out to his brothers. So it was almost like a coming out moment, where Moses before didn't want to do that. Or maybe he didn't know, and that was the moment when he knew. And he had, all of a sudden, an identity crisis. And he went out now to discover more about his brothers. Okay? And it said when he went out, he saw their burdens. And you know what? I love the way this is written. Because what happened is many times we don't do anything about certain situations because we are not aware of what's going on, right? If you are not aware of something, then you cannot be blamed for not doing anything. I said, hey, why didn't you tell me? When I'm telling you now, okay, now I will do something. But what happened is, what happened when you do learn about a situation, when you do learn about an issue or a problem or a suffering, now you know. You can't play dumb anymore. Now you know. What do you do? I will say, and this is exactly what happened with Moses. Before, he probably saw slavery and other things, and he never really stopped to think much about it. But now he realized that it was a group of people that they were suffering. Okay? So Moses, what are you going to do now? Are you going to look to the other side and go back to the palace and live the rest of your life as an Egyptian? Or what? Okay? And now that question was tested with something that he witnessed right in front of him. He saw an Egyptian man hitting a Hebrew man, one of his brothers. So this is very interesting. And now, there is one verse. I don't have it here. I forgot to put it in the slides. But basically, what it says is that after he saw this, Moses looked one side, looked the other side, and there was no one there, right? So what did he do? He killed the Egyptian and he buried him under the sand. You know what? Just give me 1 minute and I will add it here because I want to show you this. Hopefully you can still see me here. And this is chapter 2, verse here. Look at this. I'm gonna add it. Okay, so you're gonna see how I prepare my slides here. Want to show you this, guys. So this is what happened here. Let's see. Okay, this is the next verse. Okay, this is the next verse. And he said, he turned this way and that, and seeing no one about, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Why it is so important? And again, can you use your imagination, guys? I want to play a game with you. You are Moses. Okay, you witness this. Then he says, and turn this way and that way. What did he see? Because it said here, seeing no one about. We're talking about that in a minute. He saw no one. But what it says, what he didn't see. But I'm asking you, what did he actually see? Take a minute and think about it. Close your eyes if you need. Pretend that you're Moses. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, Shali Chochinov, he wanted to make sure no one was watching before he buried the body. For Hashem sees. Yeah. But what did he see? What did Moses see? Of course, Hashem sees everything. But what did Moses see? I want to know. Karen Farkas, it means that he saw no other Egyptians. He basically ignored the Hebrews. Okay, so but you're talking about people. Forget about people. What did he see when he looked one side and the other side? Okay, let me tell you what I learned. This is fascinating. And again, to understand this concept, you have to use your imagination. He said he looked one side and he saw the Egyptian buildings. He saw the palace. He looked at the other side and he saw the places where the Hebrew slaves lived. He looked one side, he saw Egypt. He looked at the other side, he saw the Hebrews. And this is amazing because the translation doesn't give us enough information. But if you go back to the Hebrew, it said, Va'ifen kovacho, one side and another, Vayare ki ein ish. It says he looked one side or the other and he realized that there was no man. It doesn't say no one. It said there was no man. And the interpretation is that he looked one side, he saw Egypt, the other side he saw Hebrew, and he felt that it was not a person. He has so much conflict inside that he didn't feel human. He was just a mess. He was a mess. Einish. There was no person there. He needed to do something. So let's keep reading this as an allegory. Okay? So it said, Vayach et HaMitzri, he struck down the Egyptian. Which Egyptian? If you read it as an allegory, he struck down the Egyptian that it was inside himself. At that point, Moses made a decision that he identified as a Hebrew and not as an Egyptian. But in order to do that, he had to struck down the Egyptian and he buried him in the sand. He left it behind. He buried the Egyptian. It's a beautiful verse, and I can't forgive myself that I forgot to put it in the slides because it changes everything. Okay? So now you can understand a little bit more why Moses had these two sides inside himself. Because from early age, he was nurtured by two cultures. And this is the point where he couldn't continue like that anymore. So he decided to fully identify as a Hebrew. He could at that point. He said, look, one side was the palace, look at the other house, the Hebrew. He said, no, I cannot live like them. The Hebrews, this one, they are slaves. I have all these amazing opportunities in the palace. I prefer that. He could have, but he didn't. And I believe that his upbringing had a lot to do with that. Okay? So I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. Right? And everything happened because he saw the burdens. And that's what happened, sometimes when you see the burdens, you have to make a decision. And I know many people, for example, that they rediscovered the Jewish roots. They always knew they were Jewish, but they never took it seriously until they actually experienced anti-Semitism, or they saw somebody else, another Jewish person, suffering anti-Semitism. And then, you see the burden, you see the suffering, and then you make the decision, you say, yeah, you know what, I'm a Jew. And that is also an aha moment for many people. And sometimes these kind of events are very powerful triggers that make us think about our identity. Things that otherwise we wouldn't pay attention. Yeah. Holy Mandel Carnier said this was a really critical moment for him, of course, and he made a huge, huge decision. But as we all know, he wouldn't be able to do it. Oh, here it was. I put it in the wrong place. This was the verse, and even better translation, you see. So, yeah. So let's continue. Because what happened is, because of this, he decided to leave Egypt altogether. In part because, I guess, he needed to take some time to discover his identity. And also because he was wanted for murder. Because it was discovered what he did. And again, the Torah is so fascinating that it can always be read in different layers. So one of the layers is that he actually killed a real Egyptian, and the other one, it was like an internal one. And both interpretation are not in contradiction with each other. That's the fascinating thing about the Torah. Okay, but yeah, he was, let's continue now in the literal meaning. He was wanted for murder. He decides to escape, to run away from Egypt, and he goes to the land of Midian. What happened there is he is going to marry the woman, the daughter of Yitro. Yitro was a priest in the land of Midian. How was the religion there? We don't know. The Torah doesn't really tell us the details of the religions. We know more about the Egyptian religion, and it's going to be more evident during the plagues, right? And the model of the Pharaoh, and how the interpretation that every plague was targeting one of the Egyptian gods. And we don't know more about what kind of religion Yitro was practicing, but somehow it looks like Moses was comfortable living there to the point that he married his wife. And not only married his wife, but Yitro also gave Moses a job. So from now on, Moses, you're going to take care of my sheep. You like that? I'm pretty sure you have a lot of sheep in Egypt. And Moses said, no, actually, you know what? Egyptians don't take care of the sheep. How do we know that? Well, remember back then when Jacob came to live to Egypt, and Pharaoh, the other Pharaoh, the Pharaoh who welcomed Jacob, was disgusted to the thing. It's, oh, these Hebrews, they take care of flocks. That is a no-no for the Egyptians. That's a dirty job. So it looks like Moses didn't have much experience at that, but nevertheless, he's in a new place. I guess he learned how to do it pretty quickly, and he became the shepherd there. So it says here, and this I want to tell you something that is fascinating. Now Moses was tending the sheep of Yitro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. Leading the flock to the far side of the desert, he came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. How did they know that there was the mountain of God? That is also an interesting question. It may be something that the Midianites worship, that they believed that was the mountain of God, and that's something that Moses may have learned there. We don't know. The Torah doesn't say. It just says that it was known as the mountain of God. Okay? The angel of God appeared to Moses in a fire blazing from the middle of a bush. You know the story. The burning bush. He looked and saw that although the bush was flaming with fire, yet the bush was not being burned up. Moses said, I'm going to go over and see this amazing sight and find out why the bush isn't being burned up. When God saw that Moses had gone over to see, God called him from the middle of the bush. Moses, Moses. Actually, it should be like this. Moses, Moses. And he said, Moses answered, here I am. Okay? Hineni. That is something that you will see, that that's the phrase where all our heroes from the Bible, when God called them, they always respond, Hineni. Here I am. I'm ready for you. Randy, you said, did God have a backup plan if Moses had not chosen to be a Jew? Moses was commanded internally. Who will lead the Jews out of Egypt? We don't know. That's an excellent question, because maybe there were other people before Moses that they failed, and the Torah doesn't talk about them. We know about Moses because he said, Hineni. Here he said it explicitly in this parsha, but he was a person. Moses was a person that always said, Hineni. Always said, here I am, ready to fulfill God's will. That was one of the things that we learn about Moses. Okay? Now, it's also interesting that God didn't appear to Moses when Moses defended the Hebrew against the Egyptian, right? Or God didn't appear to Moses when he intervened when two Hebrews were fighting, or when this group of people were harassing Yitro's daughter, and Moses intervened and fought against them. And no, God didn't appear at that moment. God appeared now when Moses was just tending the sheep, which is actually very interesting. You see, the Midrash caught that detail. And the Midrash will say, in Midrash Rabbah, once when Moses was a shepherd for his father-in-law Yitro in the desert of Midian, a small lamb ran away from the rest of the flock. Moses ran after the lamb to catch her. The lamb found a shady place with a spring of water. She rested there and drank to slake her thirst. When Moses found her there drinking, he exclaimed, I didn't know that you ran away because you were thirsty. You must be so tired. Moses took the lamb on his shoulders and carried her back to the flock. Said God, Moses, you are compassionate and extend to every animal in the flock. You should also care for my flock, the children of Israel. So, in other words, God appeared to Moses at this time because these are the qualities that God is looking in a leader. Not the fact that he knew how to fight against the Egyptian. Right? It is important because Moses showed that the concept of justice and the disgust on injustice is rooted inside himself. But that's not enough. That's not enough to become the leader of the Jewish people. God wanted to see how far away Moses' compassion went. Not his fighting skills, but his compassion. And Moses showed his compassion, taking care of a simple flock. It's amazing. It's amazing if you ask me. The things that God is looking for people. Sometimes we human beings, we look for different qualities in a leader. God looks somewhere else. Right? God looks somewhere else. And there is one more thing that I wanted to show you here. Hold on. Where is it? Here. When Moses came to the burning bush, and I will let you go with this one. It's a fascinating pearl within the parsha. Okay? God said to Moses, when Moses was coming closer, don't come any closer. Take your sandals off your feet. Because the place where you are standing is holy ground. And the question is, who cares? I mean, why is so important for Moses to remove his sandals? Because he's in holy ground. Why is so important to remove it when you are in holy ground? Well, let me tell you why. The rabbis explain that God needed to explain that that specific piece of land was special because the Torah said in the book of Genesis, and let me read it for you, right? This is because of what Adam and Eve did, their sin. So, God said to Adam, because you listened to what your wife said and ate from the tree about which I gave you the order you are not to eat from it, the ground is cursed on your account. You will work hard to eat from it as long as you live. You see, according to the book of Genesis, the entire world, the ground of the world is cursed. Okay? And there is one explanation that's why we wear shoes or sandals or something. That's why we don't go barefoot anywhere we go. It's a layer of separation between ourselves and a cursed ground. But now that Moses entered to a place when God actually told him, no, this land is not like the other land. Please remove your sandals. You don't need to be separated from this ground. This ground is not cursed. In fact, it's holy. It's special. And the fact that we kind of need to wear shoes. It's something that because the ground is cursed. For example, Shulchan Aruch will say, here first. Listen to this. Listen to this. Rabbi Yochanan said, as one dons tefillin, one should put the shoes. Okay? So I don't know if you ever put on tefillin in the morning. I said the way you put on tefillin, you should put on the shoes. There are lots of rules of how we put on the shoes in Judaism because it's something that we have to do. I said, listen to this. Tefillin are worn on the left hand. Unless you're a lefty, then you're on the right. So everything goes to the other way. So too, one puts on his shoes should begin with the left shoe. They challenge this ruling from the following baraita. When a person puts on his shoes, he puts on his right shoe first, and after this he puts on his left shoe. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak said, one who fears heaven can fulfill both directives. And who was it that followed this practice? Mar, the son of Rabbana. He will put on his right shoe, but he will not tie it. And then he will put on his left shoe and tie it. And then he will tie his right shoe. Thus, he will put on his right shoe first, as the Baraita directs, and then he tied his left shoe first in accordance with Rabbi Yochanan's ruling. It's the same thing, the same way we do it when we wash our hands. With Netilat Yadayim, before we eat bread, listen to this. The procedure for the morning Netilat Yadayim is as follows. One takes the utensil filled with water with the right hand and transfer it to the left hand. Then he pours the water first into the right hand. After this, he takes the utensil filled with water with his right hand and pours water onto his left hand. And he should do this 3 times. Okay? And beyond that, we have to remember that when you remove your shoes, when you touch your shoes to remove them, okay, you need to wash your hands as well. Why? Because your shoes touch the ground, so the shoes are always impure. Always impure. Okay, remember that. So you either remove your shoes using your feet, right? One foot grabbing against the other, and if you use your hand, then you have to wash your hands to remove the impurity because the shoes touch the cursed ground. Except Moses at that moment when he was on holy ground, so he didn't need it. Okay, thank you so much everyone for coming to this class, and great to have you all. Remember, if you miss any part of the class, no worries. This class is going to stay on YouTube and Facebook, so you can watch it anytime during the day. Or if you want to have the live experience, tune in at 8 p.m. Central Time this evening, and you have a repetition of this class, so you can study a little bit more, again, about Parshat Shemot, the beginning of the book of Exodus. Maybe you missed something, maybe you forgot something. You will have another opportunity. Okay? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Please stay safe. Hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.